It's Saturday evening. The Royal Rumble hasn't quite kicked off yet, and it's time to talk about the very best comic books of the week, which should be a very brief conversation, Drew, because this week sucked.
It sucked. It both sucked and blew. I told you before we went live on the Aficionados this morning that I ran a 10K, and I can confidently say that I would rather run another 10K right now than read 99.5% of the new comics that came out this week again. And I'll run that 10K with a big old smile on my face.
Yeah, and even the ones that we're going to recommend aren't like huge recommends. They're just kind of, you should probably check that out. I think one of the big things lacking this week, and we'll hit this before we talk about the actual recommendations. You know, Beast World issue number 5 came out this week, and it feels like it really, I don't want to say that it like veered off course or anything like that. There are things that are going on in this comic book that I just can't comprehend. In the history of Starro, and Starro's been around DC Comics for a very long time, once he dies or you push him far enough away, his spores die, and therefore the people are basically let go of whatever control he has. This one, they killed Garo at the end of issue number 4, and now all the people are still animals. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense based on DC Comics lore.
No pun intended, they blew their load after issue 4. I mean, it was so big and so massive and so grand in scale that now, by the time we've gotten to issue 5, we're just focused on Amanda Waller and her just waiting to take us with the remnants in the streets of the people who've been morphed into these beast creatures. And it's very low stakes, low scale now, and not as grand. And there's a lot of time focused on Amanda Waller in this. And unfortunately, she's just not that interesting. Tom Taylor hasn't really made her that interesting. I mean, she does have come across as kind of threatening, but not really.
Yeah, it's also kind of weirdly tying into Tom King's Wonder Woman run with the Sovereign and stuff. And I don't want to find out that the Sovereign is underneath Amanda Waller.
They're trying to make a big deal of not even maybe a C-list character, D-list character, and trying to make her the biggest, baddest evil in the DC universe. No, that doesn't fly. It's not kosher. That dog won't hunt, and it's a big mistake. And this is a course. It hasn't veered, like you said, it hasn't veered off the cliff, but it's taken a path that I don't want it to go down. This cool event has taken a side shift down a path that I don't want it to go down. I akin it to reading Stephen King's The Stand. That first book, Captain Trips, that first part of it is fucking amazing. Then you get to chapter 2, and you're just focused on the people, and they're having town meetings and resetting up the towns and having more town meetings. It's like, what the hell are we doing here? There's nothing going on here. This is boring. And it's going down a very boring path, which sucks.
I'm with you. I'm Amanda Wallered out, and I've certainly had my fill of that character. We also get, I guess, what's supposed to be an enormous reveal at the end of who Dr. Hate is. Now, we've seen Dr. Hate at the very end of Nightmares, Night Terrors, or whatever that damn thing was. We saw Dr. Hate basically turn Garo and kill Garo. I didn't know I was supposed to be wondering who Dr. Hate was. It's definitely a Josh Williamson creation because it's just a pun on Dr. Fate. And it turns out the jewel that was on Raven's head isn't containing her demon side anymore, that it escaped a long time ago, yet she never noticed. So it's Raven fighting herself in the end, and that's the big thing, because obviously the demon side of Raven killed Gar. And I just thought that was one of the most limp dick, lame ass big reveals at the end of a comic book. I was like, I could just care less.
Raven fighting her inner demons, in this case, this is not something new at all, any way, shape, or form. This is stuff that's been covered very well in the last 40 years by Marv Wolfman, George Perez, Geoff Johns, and Mike McCone when they were doing their run. It's nothing new here. There's nothing groundbreaking here. There's nothing shocking here. It's like, I mean, who cares? I mean, maybe if Marv Wolfman had come back to do it with George Perez, it'd be a big deal, but you have Tom Taylor doing this? Who cares? I mean, it's low stakes now. It's a Teen Titans book now. It's not a big DC event. It's very low scale, low stakes Teen Titans. And I just don't care, especially with this team involved in it.
You know, eventually DC Comics has to nail the landing on one of these events. How many years has it been? Like 5?
I don't even know if Doomsday Clock counts as an event. That was a Maxi series, but it's hard to really go back to an event I really like from DC. And this didn't have promise starting off, but it's going down a path that I can't go down this path with you, Annie. I can't. I'm not a fan of where we're going.
Now that we've gotten the failure that is the end of Beast World out of the way, shocking, DC Comics doesn't land another one. or at least it appears that way. Let's talk about the comic books we are going to recommend. Probably the best, most exciting book this week, Ghost Machine #1. Obviously, the imprint at Image Comics. Geoff Johns, Peter J. Tomasi, Gary Frank, Brian Hitch, Jason Fabak. Lots of creators involved on this one. Not the most exciting thing in the world. It is a preview book, but does give you an idea of what Ghost Machine's going to be. It's going to be almost 4 different imprints. One of them's going to be like Geiger, which appears to be Geoff Johns, Gary Frank, and Brian Hitch. There's another idea that's introduced in here called Rook, which I think probably has the most promise of the new stuff that's incorporated here, which is Geoff Johns, along with Jason Fabak. There's like an all-ages family type imprint from Peter J. Tomasi. And then there's also like a horror line, I think called Hyde Comics, with Geoff Johns and Ivan Reis on that one. And I think it was a pretty cool thing. The best thing about it, in my opinion, there's a couple things I like with like the red coat and the Rook stuff, but I thought the cards were awesome. I was glad that they gave you some backstory, what their abilities are, and some actual information about the characters.
Yeah, and what's great about Ghost Machine is that variety is the word that comes to mind with this brand. You have a little bit of everything for anyone with this brand. You got superheroes, you've got your more or less kind of like a D&D comic with Rook. That's the way I read it. You've got like a fun Guardians of the Galaxy type comic with the Red Coat, and you got your own Twilight Zone series with Hyde Street. Personally, the ones I'm looking forward to the most are Hyde Street and Red Coat. Red Coat looked just like a lot of fun, especially reading into American history with a lot of historical figures that he gets involved with. There's a lot of promise here, and there's some that I'm not really so much interested in, but hey, that's just my personal preference. But there's a lot of promise here because it's got variety, and I can see this being very successful.
Yeah, so that one was pretty cool. If you're interested in Ghost Machine, I think it has a good price on it. It's $5, but it is 60 pages. Mm-hmm. A lot of great art in that book, particularly. Another comic book I'm going to recommend, Van Helsing, Vampire Hunter #1 from Zenescope. Pat Shan, Julia Pellegrini. It is a Zenescope book, so obviously the star isn't going to be the real Van Helsing. It's actually his daughter. Shockingly, she looks very, very sexy. She's got very big boobs and a very nice outfit on her. But this is her basically picking up the pieces of what happened after her dad passed away, getting her own crew of vampire hunters together. And there's one lady that I thought initially was a prostitute. It turns out she makes potions and stuff like that. There's another couple of guys that are more like the muscle or whatever. And it turns out they've lost one of these brothers that are aiding her, and they've got to go off and discover what happened to him. They get right in on the action. The character looks absolutely gorgeous. The art's a lot of fun. And sometimes these Zenescope books kind of hit me.
Yeah, some of them are actually really good. Like we were reviewing one Return to Oz not too long ago. That was really good. And Man Goat and Bunny Man is actually really good too. And this Van Helsing is actually a really good series. What's great about it is that a lot of them are like short little bursts, like 3 issues, 6 issues, and they do like another miniseries after that. But what's great about this book is that it's a great jumping on point, because if you know nothing about this character, they tell you everything about her. Her family backstory, how she got her tools, her Abraham Van Helsing, the vampires. It's great stuff. And we're in 1800s, early 1900s London, which is terrific as well. There's some steampunk elements in here too. It's a lot of fun. If you enjoy vampires, if you enjoy the turn of the century technology, you like hot babes, you like vampires, this is the book for you. It's a lot of fun. If
you're a fan of the big jugs, this is the comic book for you, certainly. We do have one more indie comic book to recommend. Spawn 349, Todd McFarlane, Carlo Barberi. I believe we've got the elements of heaven and hell, or maybe trapped in hell because of Spawn. And there's just an enormous war going on. This is a very kinetic comic book. A lot of times with Todd McFarlane and Spawn, you do get a lot of talking. This is a whole lot of action.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of action, and we're finally getting to it. Who is going to take the throne of hell? Who is going to get that chair? Who's going to get that mantle? Going to be happening in the next issue 350. We see our players get into place, make their way toward it. I assume it's going to be like another Royal Rumble, and it's going to be exciting. I can't wait to read it. Yeah, this issue is so fun, so kinetic, so action-packed. It's a massive scale battle, and this is what you want. And battle for hell, for control, that's exactly what I want. Not a bunch of people talking out loud and doing nothing. And this is Spawn. We're doing something. Finally. It's outstanding. Do check out Spawn, guys.
And on issue 350, the very next issue, new artist, full-time, Brett Booth.
Boom. Sold. Take my money now.
We have one big 2 comic book to recommend. Like we said, it was a dead week. Marvel Comics, Star Wars, Thrawn Alliance is number 1. Timothy Zahn, Jody Houser writing. Andrea DeVito, Pat O'Leaf are the artists on this particular comic book, and this is an adaptation of the Timothy Zahn Thrawn Alliance's book. This is the second adaptation that Jody Houser has worked on. There are basically 2 stories, 2 narratives going on here. The one narrative that's absolutely amazing has to do with Admiral Thrawn going on a mission because the Emperor set him on it with Lord Vader, and the difference between their styles of leadership. And basically you can see the contention between the two as a big, enormous presences within the Empire and almost vying for jockeying for position within the empirical hierarchy and stuff. That stuff is absolutely amazing. Not a whole lot of action or whatever, but just seeing the 2 characters verbally joust and stuff, I thought was great. The other story is when Anakin Skywalker and a not Admiral Thrawn, when he was much younger, as part of the Chiss Uprising or whatever, end up meeting on this planet. Obviously, Anakin does eventually become Darth Vader, and they do something to this planet that they've returned to. That part's fine, but I don't like it nearly as much as Vader versus Thrawn, which is definitely the main event in this book.
Yeah, when they're both in their fully fledged forms, that's when it's great. When they're both verbally sparring against each other, issuing out orders. It's a lot of fun. So I never read the novel. Put it out there, and I'm reading this issue, and I'm thinking to myself, this is reading a hell of a lot like a novel. And sure enough, you answered my question. And it's okay. It's good. It's not. I'll put it out there. It's not action packed. There is not much action in this book at all. There's maybe 1 or 2 pages of action. Period. But yeah, it's a lot of dialogue. And look, that's fine. Understanding now that it was based on a novel, it makes sense. But it's good. It's really fun. It's like I said, the best parts are the fully fledged out forms, but the weaker parts are with Padme and Anakin. And I think he was still not even Commodore Thrawn. He was Commander Thrawn or something. And it's pretty weak, unfortunately. But it's good for the most part. I would say check it out. I'm very curious to see what the fans of the novel think of this adaptation, because Jody Houser was involved with this too. So I'm curious to see what people think, how this turned out compared to the novel.
Well, it was nice to see that Timothy Zahn was actually part of the adaptation process this time. Definitely going to help out the book. And those are our recommendations. We got nothing to recommend from DC Comics other than avoid like the plague Detective Comics, although the art is phenomenal, and certainly avoid like the plague Power Girl, which was a silent issue about a cat.
Don't tell it to Max. Don't tell it to Maxfield Von Priestley. He loves cats, and he loved that issue.
He did?
Yes, he did.
God.
He loves cats.
MVP. That book was fucking awful. What was worse, Power Girl or Detective?
Define worse.
Well, which one did you feel worse about after you read it? Like, fuck.
I would say I was bored after Detective Comics, but I wanted to rip Power Girl in half. I wanted to rip that comic in half. So I'd say Power Girl was worse.
There you go. I say Detective because it's such a drag to get through. At least Power Girl, you could just thumb to the end until there was actual dialogue in it. But DC Comics, you failed the test, and you don't have a comic book worth recommending this week. So as you save your money on DC Comics, because there was nothing to buy, there are some comic books out there worth spending some money on. In fact, Drew has a project that he's got completing right as we speak that you can pre-order on right now.
Absolutely. If you did not get a chance to back the campaign Unholy Nightmare, we have the Backer Kit pre-order page up right now. Anyone can go to this page and pre-order Unholy Nightmare #1 by Aurelio Mazzara and myself. All the covers are available, and we still have some original art available, as well as some sketch opportunities from Aurelio Mazzara. You guys do not want to miss out on the best, greatest comic of the year, right next to Hail Before Doomface.
Definitely get over there and support that project. And I do want to let you guys know, if you need more comic book content, if you want some more reviews, I do have a nice podcast over on the Patreon with my good friend Jim from Weird Science. You probably know and love him from the Comic Book Aficionados or his own podcast, where we talk about all the new comic books, best, worst, everything in between, every single Thursday, so you get it a few days earlier than the best of the week here. If you haven't checked that out, there's a link in the video description, and I do suggest it for the hardcore comic book readers.